Hi everybody, this is Ace here with Nickelbacker, and we are here to have the first episode of the Let's Talk About the League podcast. So, for those of you that don't know, the LCUS, uh, we are a small organization that runs split-based tournaments focused on balance, fun, and showcasing player skill. And so the Let's Talk About the League podcast is here to give weekly recaps and what we think is going to be coming up in the future. Special guests tonight are the top laner for Option 12, Prowler, and the 80 carry for White Wolf Gaming, Arcane Soda. Uh, Feel free to introduce yourselves as well. So I think we're going
Or
to get off to a great start, and we're going to talk about what the games last week. So, Nickelbacker, what did you think about three sets of sweeps happening last weekend?
honestly, freaking domination from all teams involved. It seemed like that main theme from last week was the teams getting a little bit better as they played. So I mean, it was just insane. It's not always exciting seeing a shutout every single time, but each second game, the opposing teams on the losing side were able to kind of claw their way back up. So there was some growth there, which is a good thing. And I feel like that we're going to see some more growth out of them this coming week. It's going to be an exciting week this week to see what everybody's going to be pulling out.
Yeah, definitely. So Prowler, how about you tell us a little bit about the games that Option 12 had versus what team did you guys play? The
I just remember my opponent was got to get lucky, so whatever team
So
he's from.
Cowbell, more Cowbell.
Cowbell, yes.
Yes. So how'd those two games go for you guys, and what really swayed you to have the 2-0?
I think the 2-0 was in large part due to our macro play. We had some issues in laning phase where we got behind a little bit, something Nickel kind of touched on, and we were able to, again, claw our way out from it and, kind of move on. I know me personally, I was getting a little upset with having to absorb so many ganks in the top lane. But when you get put on your favorite champion like I did with York, you kind of expect it to.
Yeah, definitely. That first game, there was quite the swing of gold. If you have the match history, it it wasn't anything more than a 4K gold lead for either team, and it kept ping ponging back and forth between that. But it was good to see some solid plays from both teams for the first game.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so, Arcane, Soda, um, what do you think about your two games versus Triple Strike last week? How did you guys manage to pull off a 2-0?
Well, our first game was pretty back and forth up until about the 18-minute mark. Were we picked up a few kills and a couple towers, so it was a really back and forth game. But throughout the course of the game, we were able to just get a little bit better map pressure and some really good team fights and engages that kind of let us work our way to that victory. And the second game was kind of the same story. It was a nice, really back and forth early game, and we just started to move towards that better late game team fighting and macro play that kind of just carried us to the victory.
In that second game, I believe you guys let through the Zoe for Triple Strike's mid laner Van Hohenheim. What that's I think the only the second or third time he's been allowed to play that champion due to the amount of bans that everyone throws at him. What made you guys think that leaving it up was such a good idea?
Well, Zoe had taken some significant nerfs in 8.3, 8.4, so we weren't too concerned about it. Um, we were actually going to leave it up for the first game as well, but they didn't take it in the first round of picks, so we just banned it out in the second round just to get rid of it. But we didn't feel like it was super threatening. Obviously, it's still a lot of damage potential, but it's just not uh, as ridiculous damage potential that could really turn a game on its head.
To be fair, it did seem like that Hohenheim was able to burst the squishier characters on your team to a point, but it just seems like he wasn't really able to confirm kills, and he was sometimes he was the first line of defense. It seemed like, which was kind of poor play on their part. But I feel like would it, if the tanks went in first and he was in the back and able to get that pedal ball off, would that have changed your mind of how Zoe? Well, she did just get a buff again in the latest patch, but would that have changed your mind in 8.4?
With some better engages, it would have definitely changed the whole landscape of the team fights. We just found some better engages in them, and the Zoe was played very well and was very slippery, very hard to kill, and the kills we did manage to secure were pretty good feeling. But she just didn't have the same impact as she did on release because of the significant damage nerfs that make her have to land more than one Q to delete a squishy.
For sure.
Definitely. You definitely see some changes in that in the upcoming patch, but that's a topic for a little bit later. So, Brandon, in the first set of games, excuse me, Nickelbacker, the first game was kind of a landslide in the direction of uh, Northern Storm, but in the second game, it was almost an even game all the way through. Um, Personally, I feel as though if there's a little bit more Banner of Command coming out through all the teams this weekend, the games might have been a little bit differently. But especially with Take the Lantern facing Northern Storm's very low physical damage comp of Tahm Kench, Rammus, Diana, Caitlyn, and Ornn, that I don't think they would have been able to handle a Banner of Command or two coming out. What do any of you guys think about that?
I guess I can start off with a little bit, but like it's honestly like the first part that I thought when I was watching those games was like the Northern Storm team comp. Like you said, it was kind of a low damage. Like I think even when I was commenting it out in the analyst desk, it was kind of strange seeing those picks come through because we thought that Ornn was going to be top and Tahm Kench was going to be support as per usual, but the comp itself wasn't terrible, but I feel like that it was a slow start for them, which gave Take the Lantern a massive benefit throughout the game. And sorry, I just blanked out on Banner Command for a second, but yeah, I feel like that Banner Command probably helped them quite a bit with the siege and everything, and probably what helped them take the win. They did have that. Did they have Banner of Command? I saw it a lot last week. I just can't remember who had it and who didn't.
Yeah, at the end of the game, there was a Banner of Command coming out from Shaken Not Stirred in the top lane of Northern Storm, but
Right.
unfortunately, none coming in for Take the Lantern when they could have easily taken one out on Braum.
For sure. Yeah, that probably would have helped Take the Lantern a little bit as well if they had gone that route.
Yeah. Tahm Kench wouldn't have been able to eat that cannon minion and just spat it away. That's an annoying champion.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I think that probably does it for last week's matches. But now, looking on towards the next week, we just had patch 8.5 drop, and some minor changes for the most part, with the biggest one probably being Kai'Sa's release. Evan, excuse me, Arcane Soda. What do you think about Kai'Sa? I know you have the most experience on the champion with 2 games played. But
Hey, yeah, 50% win rate. Get it right.
yes, 50% win rate. Excuse me.
I think she's pretty fun, and with some more experimentation of the builds, I feel like she could definitely be a viable pick. I don't think she's super strong right now. We just had the stats up a little while ago. She's at what, like a 38% win rate or something like that?
40% is what I'm showing.
40%? Okay. Something pretty low down there. Uh, but I feel like that's mostly because people are just trying to learn the champion. The champion released 2 days ago, so not or yesterday. So I'm not really too surprised by the lower win rates. She definitely has potential, but is not quite there yet. But I'm excited to get some more practice on her and see a little bit more how I feel about her.
Definitely. Most of the builds right now on Champion GG are pretty awful win rates. A 25% win rate for the most frequently completed build, starting with the Bork, and then the highest win rate for a completed build at 31%. Um, Prowler, what do you think about the lack of AP coming out from the Kai'Sa builds? All the highlight reels I saw from the PBE were Kai'Sa's building straight AP and just one-shotting people with their W, a lot like people were complaining about Zoe in the prior patches. What do you think?
I'm honestly kind of surprised. Her kit seems like it's tuned to like a hybrid, where you build like a Rage Blade and then do some AP and some AD to kind of synergize with all of her upgrades on her abilities. I'm very shocked that people are just building straight AD, and maybe that's just because people that are trying her aren't really thinking about that, or they don't understand the champion quite yet. She hasn't been out for very long. Um, I think as time goes on, we'll see more comps built around a hybrid champion, and that'll probably make her a little bit better. But right now, with these straight AD builds, I'm not seeing much good out of her.
Definitely, a lot of it, a lot of new champion win rates are just first picks from whichever team is lucky enough to have blue side when the champion isn't banned. It doesn't really fit into any team comps at that point. It's pretty hard to get a good team comp when you first pick an AD carry. But does anyone else have any thoughts on Kai'Sa?
I'm just looking at her stats here. One of the most hilarious aspects, she's got some terrible things going on. Like she's earning the lowest gold out of any ADC, the most deaths, the least damage given, and the fewest minions killed. But her win percentage as the people play the champion more just drops off a cliff. Most people are getting their win on her the first time they play her, and then the longer they play her, are getting closer and closer to a 0% win rate.
Yeah.
Another thought I have about her is her passive, the 5 hits, the plasma portion of it. I feel like that could be looked at in the future for possibly buffs. I feel like it takes a very long time to get those 5 stacks. You can still have your allies apply the stacks with CC if they're close enough to you, but it still does feel very slow and kind of awkward having to get 5 autos off in the earlier game at the very least, whereas most champions similar to that, you've got Brahms passive procs on 4, you've got Tris, well,
Vayne's
press the
passive is 3.
Vayne's passive is 3, yeah. Press the attack is 3. There's a lot of 3s and 4s, and this is kind of the first time they've done a 5, and it just feels really awkward and offsetting.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it has enough burst damage associated with it to really make it worth the time investment. Like, of course, it's better than not having anything happen after 5 attacks, but it's kind of not enough damage to really like have an impact.
Right, and the other part of the passive is once you get those 5 procs, it does percent or it does damage based off of increased by missing health, which with 5 attacks, your targets are already pretty low at that point. So it almost feels redundant, but if you're chunking through tanks, then it's going to be great if you can fight a team fight front to back and just be focused on those tanks and not have to worry about the carries and the damage coming through. It almost feels like they're more or less discreetly forcing you to go for that Rageblade Hurricane build, just to get the most out of your passive as you possibly can.
Personally, I feel like it may be the whole champion currently might be a case of overthinking. Everybody might just be thinking how you have to min-max the champion to get the most out of her passive and her abilities when maybe if we just started looking at her as a more evasive or slippery 80 carry that you just built normally, she might end up surging a little bit. Like, you already have the percent damage as we talked about with her passive. Maybe we don't need to build Bork first item as so many people are doing.
I actually don't like the Bork on her. It just feels awkward.
Yeah, you're kind of half-assing the Q and the E evolutions with just an item that doesn't really give that much from either stat, and having to wait till a third or fourth item to actually get those evolutions might be an issue as well. But there's a lot of other changes coming in this patch. One of the two main win rate changes are Scion and Azir coming in from the top lane. And I know you played versus a Scion last week, Prowler. How do you feel about these changes?
As someone who doesn't play Scion, I'm pretty thrilled. I was, of course, spamming him as much as I could in my solo queue games just to abuse the E proc like everyone else was. So seeing that get fixed and seeing his win rate drop immediately with it is kind of nice. It's, nice when Riot takes away some of the cheese from your lane. Azir, I don't have too much of a thought on just because the champion is so rarely seen. I know, of course, my mid laner Ace, who's on right now, plays him, but I would think that you would have a higher understanding of what's going on with Azir than I would.
Yeah, you don't really. When you look at the nerf, that doesn't look like the type of nerf that would drop a win rate 13 places. Just losing 30 damage on level 5 Q and 10 damage on level 1 Q. It might honestly just make the Azir players change their max. I know that a lot of people were maxing Q before their W, and it might just make people change to maxing their W first and getting the attack out of the Sand Soldiers instead of just poking down with the Q in lane. But there are two other large, three large mid lane changes. The first one being the Zoe changes are being reverted. I wish I had Van Hohenheim here to tell me how good he's feeling about that, but Zoe jumped from the last win rate up pretty far, up 29 places, just off of additional AP ratio, basically, on her Q. That's going to be a pretty big buff, I think.
Well, we all know what Von Hohenheim's doing right now. He's playing League right now, and he's playing his brand. Wait, that doesn't sound right.
No.
That should be Zoe.
Yep.
Somebody sent him a message.
Yeah.
Well, also to point out, they increased the damage on the Q, but they also took away the part where it would proc more Sparkle's passive. So, still overall more damage on the Q, but it's not going to be as significant as a buff as it would be if that stayed on there.
What does No Sparkles proc on currently? Is it only
More
activated
Sparkles,
on
I
the
believe,
key,
is
or
More Sparkles is her passive, so it's basically her Lichbane proc.
oh, and that's just every time that she casts.
When she casts an ability, she gets more Sparkles and she can auto. Or it might just be Paddle Star. I'd have to look into it. But when it's basically like a Lichbane proc for her autos now.
Interesting.
Just her autos.
If my mouse start working. Yeah, they definitely are. Zoes are enjoying the new itemization as well. With how good Luden's Echo is now, just as a starting item, they seem to be avoiding rushing Lichbane like they used to, which just overall is a better itemization path. The next largest change in the mid lane is Galio. We haven't seen very much of it mid in the LCUS, but there are some pretty big changes to his Q, which is most of his damage. No damage changes, just a lot more higher mana cost, almost 50% increase on the Q, and 2 extra seconds on the cooldown. The cooldown increase won't be too bad with the new 20% cooldown reduction items, but that mana cost will hurt him pretty bad. Maybe Shaken Not Stirred won't be pulling him out on the top lane anymore, but someone that he could pull out on the top lane now after this patch, or anyone really, is the Swain. Have any of you played versus Swain since this patch?
I have not.
I've not had the pleasure.
If you guys watched, well, I know Arcane Soda saw yesterday during the first game, the Swain top lane just absolutely destroying people. There are some very large changes to his ratios, and I think it's almost an overreaction by Riot just from people not knowing how to play the champion yet and overbuffing him to compensate for that. He jumped 28 places in the win rates this week.
I'm showing 35 now.
Yeah. And he's up to like top 5, top 7 in the mid lane.
This is probably going to be a quick change back because that's just he was pretty strong after the rework. Like just making him stronger, I don't know why they thought that was a good idea.
After his rework, he actually did feel very underwhelming. All of his cooldowns were so long that he almost felt like if you missed your burst potential when your abilities were up, you just weren't going to get any damage off. You had to wait. So yeah, significant cooldown changes on his Q at early levels. More range on his W, or a larger hitbox for his W, which is extremely easy to dodge given how slow it is to actually pop. And then a couple bug fixes on his E, and then a larger radius for it. So yeah, some pretty significant stuff for him. I don't expect it to get 100% reverted, but I could definitely foresee some minor nerfs coming in the next couple patches just to kind of bring him back to where he was, or not necessarily where he was, but to a healthier spot.
Yeah, it's a pretty big change off of very little information. A more reasonable change that happened was, of course, as a mid laner myself, the Rise change. I love the champion. A little bit overpowered on the wave clear, so they just nerfed his E wave clear a little bit. Just dropped him a few spots. It's not going to really impact bad Rise players, such as myself, very much. But it should have a decent impact on the professional Rise players that could really combo E spread with a Q spread with another E spread. That's a crazy combo once you're actually good at the champion. Now joining us is Sig, the famous, much like Nickelbacher, LCUS caster, who's going to give us a little bit of a rundown on the changes to tank junglers with the Cinderhulk and Warmog nerfs.
He's actually like 10 tiers above me, but it's nice to be thrown in on the same playing field as him.
10 tiers on a shit cake, maybe, but that's about it. Hey, everybody.
That's quite the introduction right there.
Well, I come in, I go big or I go home. That's what Sig's all about. Tank junglers, yeah, and that's some stuff. The big changes to Warmogs, with the with the changes that they've made in this most recent patch, I like to see the return of tank junglers, especially with the assassin heavy meta, with the implementation that had happened with this the not veracity, not the itty. What's the itty?
It's something itty.
Lethality.
That's
There we
the
go.
one.
Lethality. I love seeing the return of the tank junglers. I like engage heavy champions like Maokai. I love to see him come back into the meta. Even old Maokai, back before the R change. It was just fun to see and fun to play, and I like to see that we're able to get more flexibility in other lanes with the jungle being able to not have to be assassin.
Yeah, we definitely see people prefer tank junglers in the LCUS. People like Trufflesaurus, and Alan Z. Tardis, and I believe Toxic
Cheney did 9/11 as well.
That's
Yep.
that it was him or Toxic Cupcakes that also leans towards stuff like Sejuani. Sej is one of the junglers, in my opinion, that's going to be getting one of the larger nerfs from this. Sej used to be able to go Cinderhulk into Warmogs, and once he hit level 10 or 11, I believe, would be able to proc the Warmogs passive and pretty much run around the jungle full health. But with the change of Cinderhulk having a 5% reduced bonus health and moving the health threshold up from 2,750 to 3,000 for Warmogs, it's going to take a little bit longer, probably up to level 13 or 14, or just a extra ruby crystal to really proc that. But there aren't really any other jungler changes coming in on this patch. Unless you guys think that we'll see any more of the Nocturne.
I don't know. Jungle changes. Cloud Drake just rose in priority.
I was gonna say, how could you forget the Cloud Drake buff?
That's a global change, not just a jungle change. Come on, guys.
Jungle objectives.
But,
Cloud
yeah,
Drake
man.
buff.
Hey, haven't you guys seen Apollo? It's an 80 carry objective. It's not.
Hey man, that was one game.
That was like 7 times in one game. I think we can count that. You no longer need to take Smite. Just take that spellbook and just let your 80 carry secure it. It's fine.
Everything is a little bit easier when you're playing against TSM though.
Yeah. Free SM.
Best spot lane in the West, my ass.
Yeah. The Rengar is getting some more buffs. They reverted him last patch to being very similar to how he was before his rework. And they realized that's still not good enough, so they're giving him a lot more just ratios. But I think those are the main changes. Besides, I think that you're talking about Banner of Command a little bit before the start of this.
I was getting ready to complain heavily about what was the Banner of Command meta that they had fixed. So I'm tickled pink that Baron double buff thing is gone.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier, and Soda, I believe you were giving a good rundown on how the damage has changed.
All right, so the way the change works is they took it away so the damage doesn't multiply on itself. The buffs don't multiply on each other. So you're still getting the bonus damage from the banner, and you're still getting the bonus damage from the Hand of Baron buff. They're just not multiplying the multipliers together. So if the base damage was 2 and the damage is multiplied together, you've got the Hand of Baron buff, say that's another times 2. So you're up to 4, and then you've got your Siege Minion, the Banner of Command buff is another times 2. So you'd be up to 8. So instead of that, now you've got your base damage at 2, and the buff is times 2, so that's plus 4. Well, The way I'm
We don't have
explaining
the
it
exact
doesn't.
numbers, but yeah, it's
Right.
it's
The way I'm
about
explaining it doesn't sound like it's actually changing.
yeah, it's about like it's down from being about like 8 damage to being closer to like 6 damage if you're just using round numbers for this situation. I believe it's down from like 8 tower shots or up from 8 tower shots to about 11 tower shots. So a little bit of a nerf, not the biggest nerf in the world, but just lets your tower stay alive a little bit longer. So you might be able to actually find and engage. But I think that's about all of the, well, besides Cloud Drake, if anyone would like to talk about that.
All right, so some significant buffs for Cloud Drake here. The Cloud Drake buff now grants 2% bonus movement speed all the time, and when you're out of combat, that's tripled instead of just giving 25 out of combat movement speed per stack. So it's a pretty nice buff for Cloud Drake. Definitely going to feel better to go take the Cloud Drake instead of just letting it sit there all by itself, because he has friends too, okay? Just give him some love.
Yeah,
Um,
a Mumu level
By
friends.
brutally murdering him and taking
Yeah.
his ability
his-
for your own. Okay.
Give him as much love as you want. Like, just barrage him with your love. And by love, I mean bullets.
I really like this change because it rewards speed emphasis champions or champions that build speed items. I know as a support main, I'm always tickled when I get percentile changes because of things like boots and mobility, support boots, and Hecarim. I mean, this makes it a priority for him now.
Right, and now it's gonna grant him bonus damage throughout fights because he's not just losing that Cloud Drake buff as soon as he takes damage. So it's pretty good because it helps, especially since it's a percent, it helps you just move faster than the other team the whole time and just get a better chase down, allows you to kite, allows you to move around the map better. It's just so much potential in this, and you can potentially get more than that base 25 that movement speed that you would have been able to get from the buff prior.
Yeah, running the numbers a little bit, you get about, on average, about 7 movement speed in combat, which doesn't seem like too much, but if you get 3 of those, it's about having another pair of boots, which is crazy. And then for someone like Hecarim, you get 1 or 2 extra damage in combat, which once again doesn't seem that crazy, but you know, how many times have we all had people get away with 50 health or 100 health, and that 1 or 2 damage through all of his abilities really will stack up a little bit.
Right,
Yeah,
and
no-
these are all percentages, so there are other items in the game that allow you to get some more movement speed, like Yumu's, like Dead Man's Plate, some other things to help you move around the map even faster, and it's just baseline tripled when out of combat, so you're getting with no boots, you're getting about the same movement speed out of combat.
Alright, does anyone else have anything for this patch, or should we move on to the upcoming week games?
I guess I just want to touch on press the attack real quick. They buffed it kind of after nerfing it and brought up to that 8 to 12% ratio. It seems like Riot thinks that a lot of people are going to be running press the attack, and I'm just not seeing it. So I'm wondering what the deal is there. Is there some hidden way to use press the attack that no one's caught on to, or what? Does anyone else have a thought on that? Why they keep playing around with it?
So
Right.
they it looks like they did that in addition to a fleet footwork nerf. They're reducing the healing that you get off of just attacking minions in your lane, like if you're standing under tower as an AD carry. They're looking definitely to try to have some more people pick up press the attack. So I think with the now 8 base percent and the flat damage, people might actually start taking it more in the bot lane. What do you think as an AD carry main?
Well, the previous patch they fiddled with this. They also increased the base damage on press the attack from proccing it. So they were kind of trying to do that to increase the priority. but then Fleet Footwork was just so much better as well at the time. So they're kind of doing this conjunction of buffing Press the Attack a little bit more in the early game, and then taking Fleet Footwork's effectiveness in lane a little bit down, making it so you have to trade with champions if you want that same healing if you're a ranged champion. So I feel like this is a pretty good buff for Press the Attack to kind of bring it into that desirable stage. But Fleet Footwork is still going to be... It's going to be nice to have in lane just to get that extra movement speed while trading or farming. Just every little bit of sustain does help, but definitely not a must pick in lane anymore.
Yeah, AD carries are still going to be looking to just really survive until they get 2 items for the most part. Especially people like Kaisa who are trying to survive till they get 8 items. And Fleet Footwork.
8.5.
Yeah, excuse me, 8.5. Let's be reasonable. And Fleet Footwork helps them a lot more with that. Just like we saw the meta go from Fervor of Battle to Warlord's Bloodlust late last season. But yeah, so next week, this Sunday, some may even say Sunday the 11th, starting at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, we have some very intense matches. The start of the playoff implications, and let's just start from the bottom and work our way up to the what we're all here to talk about. But the bottom 2 teams are playing versus each other. We have More Cowbell versus Take the Lantern. Both of these teams are sitting at the bottom with just 1 point, and both teams can still make playoffs, actually. Sigtao, what do you think is going to be the swaying part of this matchup, and how do you think one way or the other the match is going to go?
I don't want to say that it's a particular weight. Just 1 second. Let me pull up my resources. Come on now.
Yeah, they're only 1 point behind Team Triple Strike, who's sitting with 2 points. So honestly, either team winning a single game, or the set will bump them into 4th place most likely.
Yes. I am so sorry. I'm having such a hard time finding what I was looking for.
That's okay. Ace doesn't.
Round
know
on back to
matches
me.
very well.
Round on back to me.
All right. Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can jump in. But it's going to be interesting to see what the players are going to be bringing to the table this weekend, because like you said, they still have the chance to get into the playoffs, so that's going to be a big time for them. So like, it's time to essentially just dig down, find what's inside of them, and bring awesome games for us this Sunday. And honestly, like I said, like we had major growth last week. It seemed that there was a lot of, I don't want to say testing going on, but I mean, we've had a lot of different junglers, different champs come through this split, and it seems like that people are starting to get a feel for it, especially since we had some mismatches for teams this split rather than keeping the same teams. So it seems like that people are starting to get more comfortable with each other, and it's really going to have to start showing for especially the bottom 2 teams this coming up weekend.
Yeah, one thing that's not going to help Take the Lantern very much is they're having 2 subs subbing this week for probably their most important set of matches.
Well, just forget everything I said. Goodbye.
Hey, there's still 3 parts, 3 parts that work together a little bit. They have
and
a
the really
mid-lane sub and a support sub. Sorry for cutting you off.
And the really important thing about this matchup is going to be which team's going to work better together, because that's kind of how they've been losing their games, is the teams they've been playing against have just had better team fights, had better map rotations, were working a little bit better as a team, and Cowbell and Take the Lantern just didn't look like they could keep up in the late game, because they were right there for almost all of their games in the early games, very back and forth games that they've had. So they're definitely capable of pulling out some wins in these last 2 weeks, and I'd just like to see some better teamwork to help carry one of them through to the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree, and one of the major problems that Tech Lions ran into, which was slightly touched on, is this week is not an exception for them. They have a constant rotation with between Five Locos had to have a sub. I know we had to run one last week for their support. They're just not getting the cohesion that these other teams are able to pull off, and that's where Cowbell's going to shine. You look at players like Brandana and Mr. Pig, who've had, 2 splits now to build up some of the best synergy in the LCUS. Last split, they've dominated on Triple Strike, and they've been a highlight for this team. And I think that's going to that's going to continue to be the trend.
Definitely. Menards has been one of the main carries for Take the Lantern, and he's going to have quite the challenge with his second sub support in 2 weeks versus a bot lane with such good synergy.
And honestly, Menards this split hasn't been looking super impressive, or at least not as impressive as he was, especially in the gym class feeders games where he was ADCing, where he just popped off, and he's the 2 penta legend.
Yeah, back-to-back pentas.
I want to see some more pentas out of him.
Yeah. If they're not banning Vayne, they should just be picking Vayne. Got to get work some game, right?
Those pentas also didn't happen on LCUS. They happened on gym class feeders, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
that would be correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then we're moving on. Unless anyone has anything else to say about that match.
I guess for me, one of the weird things is the 2 mid laners are 2 people who don't play Anivia, so it's always fun to see what they pick. For me, on Take the Lantern, Udge or Huge doesn't seem to play a lot of carry mid laners, or he gets banned out of them. We've seen him pull out Teemo. I can't recall what he did in week 2. Galio. It just, he doesn't seem to want to take the role of the, the high AP damage to really carry his team through, and I think that's been hurting him a lot in this split.
Yeah, definitely.
The other important thing to note about both these mid laners is they both drawn a lot of Veigar and Ziggs bans. So, kind of, those are up in priority for those 2 mid laners at the very least.
Yeah, but it's not the LCUS Classic Icebird. Ban it every game.
Icebird's overrated.
Why have any fun?
No Arcticuno allowed.
Nope. Trademarked pending. But 2 mid laners that do play Anivia, well, at least one, for the second set of matchups, that we will be talking about. Triple Strike versus Team Northern Storm. The mid lane is the matchup that, of course, I will be watching closely with the assassin player on Northern Storm, Sigtao Infinity, versus the more of control mage, Veigar, Anivia, Vel'Koz coming out from Van Hohenheim on Triple Strike. I think that's going to be a pretty critical matchup for how that set will go.
Absolutely. I think it's important for Northern Storm, and especially because they have Fat Lee, who's so good in the jungle, to consistently get ganks on Van Hohenheim and get the assassin ahead, so that Sigtao can just pick off Van Hohenheim and prevent his power spikes early on.
Definitely. Another important matchup for that game is going to be the top lane matchup. I know that Great Beard of Odin has a little personal rivalry with Shaken Not Stirred. I expect to see some interesting picks coming out from both laners for their matchup. What kind of stuff do you think we might see Prowler as a top laner yourself?
As a top laner, I can tell you I dislike playing against both players, so I understand the rivalry that they have. It's really fun when you have 2 players who know each other so well and know each other's champions so well, because it's the little changes that can make all the difference. I'll be looking at Greybeard of Odin to make a slight change to his gameplay that throws off Shaken Not Stirred. That's kind of my hope for the matchup. Shaken Not Stirred, Brad's play in the top lane has been outstanding in both splits. He's very hard to lane against. So I think Great Beard of Odin needs to just change something, or they need to focus on that with their ganks to hopefully kind of prevent Shaken from becoming the split pushing monster he's been.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Triple Strike can do the reverse camp. Su Li definitely, Fat Lee, excuse me, definitely camps top lane a lot, and if they can just sit up there with somebody like a Zac or a Mumu or someone that can just gank every 10 seconds, just really throw off Shaken Not Stirred's top lane. Get him tilted.
I'm honestly just waiting to see Odin bring out the Fiona again.
Yeah, the Fiora would be
Fiora. Jeez.
She knows her name. She knows her
Yep.
that would be an interesting change, and probably maybe a welcomed one for that team that started off with 2 1-1 weeks, and hopefully we'll be able to get a few more points on the board to make the playoffs push. Anyone have anything else about this matchup, or should we move on?
I think that the real highlight, the real thing that Team Triple Strike's going to have to watch out for is they really need to prioritize Goon Stomp. The guy's kind of like my opinion, the secret best weapon that Northern Storm have. You're going to see heavy picks and bans come across, just like we have the entirety of Split so far, towards that mid laner Infinite. And Goon Stomp, guy's got an Olympic-sized champion pool. If you're not targeting him, if you're not making sure that he's a priority for your picks, for your bans and with your ganks, he's going to get ahead. I think he's the secret meta right now is whatever you're going to see Goon Stomp playing.
Definitely, he's been consistent. Last split, he subbed in as the interview with 1v1s with Sig. Commissioner Sig said he subbed on multiple teams last split, multiple roles, consistent in all of them, and now on a team with such a consistent top side, it's going to be a problem. But moving on to the key matchup that hopefully everyone will be tuning in to watch this weekend. The first set of games between Option 12 and White Wolf Gaming, sitting tied for first place with 7 points. And we have Arcane Soda from White Wolf Gaming and Prowler from Option 12 here specifically to talk about that matchup. But the most important part about these two players being here to talk to us is that they were both actually on White Wolf Gaming last split. And, well, that was a heck of a team. And now as rivals on the Rift, what do you guys think is going to happen on Sunday?
I think we let the AD carry start, right? And they usually go first.
Yeah, they start with an A. There you go.
I mean, if we're going top down,
that's true too. Yeah. Well, I mean, the casters are on top of everybody, so maybe the casters should start off.
Well, Lord, big as I am, y'all probably crippled by now. But I will tell you, I will tell you, the mid laner for Option 12 is one piece of shit.
Yeah, he's garbage.
No.
Only has 3
his
tanks.
personality. His personality.
Yeah.
Well, have you seen him? Lord, he broke every mirror in his house. No.
No comment.
It's
No
matte. That's why I use
comment.
matte displays, so that I don't get the reflection back. Come on.
No, in all honesty, the Option 12 is really the anomaly in the LCUS as they don't have any repeats. We don't have any people that played with someone else from the prior split. Shaden and Ashaway, 2 new players. We've got Prowler from White Wolf, Brew City Brawlers had Trufflesaurus, and Ace was on Triple Strike. I don't know what kind of dynamic y'all came in with, but it's been a strong powerhouse. I mean, you're consistent every game, and it's not just consistent domination by one player. Everyone's performing well. Well, you got White Wolf, who's just the complete opposite of that. They picked up Cheney from Hardcore Campers, which was one of the highlights for that team last split when they did perform well. It was on the back of Cheney. And then the rest of White Wolf stayed the same. So we're really seeing a clash of the old guard and the new guard, and seeing exactly what do dynamics work. Does this built up synergy that we allow certain people to have by staying on the same team, does it matter? And I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. Nickel, do you have anything to say about that?
Ditto. More to that. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot what Sig said. It's as a caster, it's just interesting to see like the cohesion of the players for what they had last split, and then now that we got a little bit of a split up in this split, it's been more interesting to see how people have been playing to their previous teammates' strengths or playing to their new teammates' strengths. It's just been at a loss for words right now.
It's been spectacular, is what
It's
you
been spectacular.
Spectacular.
Thank you, Ace. But yeah, like I said, and now that we're getting closer to the end of the split, it's all bets are off now. Like, friendships be damned. I'm kidding. We're all friends here. No salt allowed. But like this weekend is going to be a bloodbath. I think it's going to be interesting to see what everybody's going to be taking out. See if they're going to be doing anything that's going to catch the other off guard. It's all bets are, like I said, all bets are off this weekend.
Definitely.
I think it's touching on the friendships be damned thing. One of the hardest things for me this week is maintaining the competitive spirit against White Wolf Gaming, just because I've played so long with them. You know, we had gotten together. We were largely under-leveled compared to some of the other teams. You know, we were all silver players, and we're playing against, you know, Diamond ADCs in the first split, and it was looking really like, you know, how are we going to compete? And we did. We made it to the playoffs. We had that second overall finish, and couldn't pull it out against Triple Strike to make it to the final, but we were right there with them. You know, early on, Kyle, the top laner for White Wolf Gaming, didn't have a headset, so we chipped in and bought him a headset so he could communicate with the team. In my duo queue games, I've been playing with their mid laner Lysimachus in most of my games. So it's hard for me to look at, you know, a team where I know so many people. I'm friends, you know, especially with Evan and Al, who I've, you know, spent the past couple of years getting to know, to maintain that competitive spirit and not also kind of cheer them on in the back of your mind. But obviously, when it comes time for Sunday, you know, I'm gonna kick your ass, Evan.
Yeah,
I'd like to see you try.
Prowler, you give me hope for the future of League of Legends. No more toxicity.
No, I'm just. Come on, Arcane. Tell him how much you're gonna kick his butt. Don't care about friendship. Let's go.
All right, but another fun fact about White Wolf, especially last season, is this. Well, 3 of us now, but the 4 of us, everyone except for our mid laner, was friends outside of the game. So we all got to know each other, and we all kind of got brought into this league by Prowler, and it's been a godsend. I love the league, and I'm so happy that my team's doing so well. And it's very competitive, and I'm really liking it, and I'm just ready to show Prowler that I'm still better than him. He plays more ranked than me. He's a higher rank than me, but I'm still better than you, bud.
Whew. Those
The
are
shade.
Strong words. Strong words.
No, the Shaden's on our team, Nick.
Oh man, sorry.
Yeah, that's fair.
Somebody finally picked up on that.
I'm offended by that pun.
We're gonna smash your bot lane, and we're gonna smash your team.
Oh, whew.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Sig, hold Prowler back. I'll hold Arcane back. Hold him back.
And I'll just sit here. But it's great.
But all trash talk aside, it's gonna be a real interesting matchup, and I couldn't be more excited for this weekend.
Yeah, it's also going to mean a lot for the playoffs coming between our 2 teams. Honestly, unlikely, but possibly one of our teams could still miss the playoffs going 0-2 this week. Very unlikely, but
Now you just jinxed yourself.
yeah, it still matters. These games matter a lot, even sitting 6 points above the bottom teams. Very important.
Probably that means he's gonna throw your games just so I get to still say I'm better than you.
Yeah, it's gonna be a real shame when you miss the playoffs, Evan. It'll be nice knowing that you're watching me, though. I'll feel good about that.
Oh please, you'll probably lose your first match anyways.
Wow.
It's that White Wolf spirit keeping you from the finals.
Oh boy. Oh boy. This is what we all came here for, though. I like it. All right. I think that about wraps it up despite the hundreds of thousands of Twitter questions that we got, I don't think we have any time to answer them. Those poor suckers will just have to wait for another week.
Hang on. I've got one here from I can't read the URL, but it's for you, Jared.
Oh, great.
Will you be casting more games for the LCUS?
Let's hope
God,
not.
I hope not.
Yeah, thank you. Please no. Save me. And everyone
Well,
else. that
I
has to
hope that's
listen.
the answer they were looking for.
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions that they heard from people or anything they'd like to say before we wrap this first amazing Let's Talk About the League podcast up?
Also, I got another question from some other person. Did you rig the schedule to like?
Oh yes, I knew exactly how every team was going to play, and so the schedule was completely rigged.
It was
From the
all
start.
a long
See-
string of calculations. Like
I was-
chalkboard filled with everything.
Yeah, I was really backing you up on that you didn't, because let's be real. If you rigged the schedule, this would have been the last week, not the second to last week. Come on.
No, we need to let your hopes be crushed, but not by Prowler. He needs to cheer you on in the final week while you lose the playoff dream.
It's okay. He can cheer me on in the finals match.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see each other in the finals after we crush you this weekend. But anyone else have any questions? Nope. Okay. And with that, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next Monday, most likely. And of course, we'll be here on Sunday, starting at 5:30 Central Time for the great LCUS and the great matchups that we talked about. Thank you.